All right, welcome to council time, Wednesday, March 20th. The room is fairly empty other than prestigious dignitaries. We'll start with a roll call.
Councillor Marshall? Here. And Councillor Young?
Here.
Councillor Belcott?
Here.
And Councillor Bowerman?
Present.
And Chair Medveji?
Present, thank you. We'll go right to amendments to the agenda, item number 2.
And the only amendment is the one that council talked about last night, is adding potential charter amendments under old business. So it would be item 4.2.
All right, any objection to adding that to
No
the agenda?
objection.
All right, 4.2 is added. All right, so we'll go to item number 3, public comments on agenda items only, please. I don't see anyone in the audience.
And I do have at least one right now online. Looks like a couple now. Terry Niles, please go ahead.
A little trouble unmuting.
Okay, well, maybe.
Hello, can you hear me?
Are you ready?
Yes.
We're waiting.
Yeah, I am. Okay, I was having trouble unmuting. And I do want to thank you for allowing me to talk about this issue as a former Charter Review Commissioner. I just wanted to share some light on what the Charter talked about, Charter Review Commission talked about around this. I do want to bring up something I think that I didn't know last time I talked to you about this. You know, redistricting happens every 10 years. This is not an emergency to take care of at this time. We are going to have a lot of initiatives on the ballot. The ballot in November is going to be huge. There's going to be campaigns that are going to run huge campaigns, initiative no campaigns. And I would hate to see anything like taking care of redistricting, which is important, and redoing that, be caught up in that kind of divisiveness and that kind of clouding the issue. So I don't particularly think that this is a great time to put redistricting on there. You have, I think, at least 8 years to address the issue. I appreciate all the work that the auditor has done on it. As far as redistricting, we did have a committee with the Charter Review Commission, and they started talking about it. Finding a truly nonpartisan way to go about redistricting is really difficult. And we decided to leave it for the next Charter Review Commission to address, because it's there are different models around the country to make that happen. And I think that public input is important, and the Charter Review is tasked with that as well. So that's the only thing. I really appreciate allowing me to speak about this. I know I want to see, of course, we all want to see everything that you put on there, should it be successful. I just don't think that this is the time to address redistricting or really any of those issues. We don't want it to get clouded and linked with any other initiatives that people are going to see on the ballot. So please consider my remarks, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you for that. All good comments. Appreciate it very much.
John Lay, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for your time and your efforts on behalf of Clark County citizens. I'd like to talk about the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Bar none, it is the single largest public works project in the history of the Portland metropolitan area. You're talking at $5 to $7.5 billion today is the price tag, and Administrator Greg Johnson has already admitted the price tag's going up, but that he won't be providing a cost update until sometime later this summer. And so some people are estimating that price tag is going to go up to $9, perhaps $10 billion. When it comes to the issue of transportation, overwhelmingly, there's a single issue that the people care about. That's saving time. You can't save time unless you eliminate or significantly reduce traffic congestion. Frustratingly, sadly, the current IBR proposal does none of that. In fact, they are estimating that travel times from Vancouver to the Fremont Bridge will double by 2045, a decade after the project opens. What an unbelievable waste of the people's money when you're talking about things actually getting worse. The overall concept is they want to replace a 3-lane bridge that's already over congested with another 3-lane bridge. That new bridge is going to last for 100 years. Why on earth wouldn't you add enough new lanes and capacity to actually provide for growth in the future? Next important thing is the addition of light rail on that. The current proposal has a downtown Vancouver waterfront light rail station that's going to be 75 to 80 feet in the air. Nobody is going to want to use that when 2,500 feet to the north, there will be a ground level transit station, number one. Number two, the IBR wants to put that directly above an active railroad line. That BNSF railroad line carries hazardous materials every day. They have what they call unit trains that carry 100 cars or more of oil on its way to refineries in northern Washington. Who on earth would put a transit station directly above a rail line carrying hazardous materials? Bottom line is we need to do our due diligence and serve the people, giving them what they want, and that is traffic congestion relief. And we can do it for an extremely affordable price tag, somewhere around $1 billion, not $6, $7, $8, or $10 billion. Thank you so much.
Right to the second. Thank you. And next caller?
And I do not see any other hands.
Okay, and there are certainly none in the audience. Moving on then to item 4, which is old business, 4.1, the minutes. Have everyone had a chance to take a look?
Yes.
I move approval of the minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Second.
Okay. Any further corrections or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Then moving on to 4.2, charter amendment. And maybe not everyone was apprised of why we're even readdressing this so quickly. So who wants to address that?
I can share.
I-
And I did have Kristen update the document that was before council last week with the potential charter amendments, where the top talked about the process, timeline, and cost. So all of the potential amendments are the same, even though last week there was support to move forward with 2 of them. I just included them all. So it was brought to our attention that the cost is significantly less than what was presented to council last week. So as you can see on the piece of paper there or on your screen, for 1 amendment, it's $24,000, 2 amendments, $48,000, and 3 amendments is $69,000. So that is one change that council was hoping to have a discussion if you wanted to include other potential amendments. There was also an update that I believe the auditor shared with council with some language updates on one of the proposed amendments. And I think there might be also a question out there on the 3rd item. I haven't seen any follow through on it, but I've been in other meetings this morning, so it doesn't mean I haven't received it. There was a statement made last week that the sheriff's office salary or the sheriff's salary would not change into the new term. That is also being reviewed right now to see if that's an accurate statement.
I can speak to that when we get to that point. I did the research today, so we can talk about that.
So I just want to make, because that's new to me, is that it is questionable, that if it passed, it would be an immediate change, even midterm, for the sheriff, or any elected that we change the salary for.
So, in answer to that question, Chair Medveji, the sticking point here is that in relating to the state constitution, that as long as the elected, the person whose salary is going to be changed isn't the one setting their own salary. For instance, if it's council setting salary, that would have to happen after the election and not in the current term. However, the council is setting salary for other electeds. It can happen at the time of that election. When the charter amendment, if it passes, it would start in that same, whoever's holding that position.
Okay, thank you for that. So, and there's a lot of substance on a very short timeline to get these proposed, get the proposed language where we have 4 to agree to it. So there's a lot of work ahead. But, and Karen, I didn't know if you wanted to comment, but from my point of view, this change in cost and then putting it in context of what the election itself costs out of our general fund changes the context completely for me, and where I was not really willing to speak up on behalf of my own proposed charter amendment, I would now like to. So, Karen, I'll let you go ahead and start, but I'm wondering if we want to just revisit all of the proposals, because I certainly would, and especially those that may not have moved forward last time. So,
Yes,
in any case,
I would agree.
those are
I
my
think,
feelings.
yeah, I agree. I think that we should take them one by one, and just be sure that we are clear on what happens with each one, and revote if that is appropriate. I think that the change in cost is truly a game changer, because whereas maybe some of them we thought, well, let's see if we can find another way to accomplish a similar objective or postpone or whatever. Now it would be more cost effective to do it at this point in time, perhaps with that change in cost for putting an amendment forward than what we had understood last week. So yes, I would suggest that we start with the first potential amendment and just go down through them.
That's fine with me. I would, if you could scroll down. I didn't print this out, so I'm not sure what we're looking at yet.
We would start with redistricting committee, I would think.
So here, if I could, I'll just introduce my concerns, and they haven't really changed as a result of the price tag and reconsideration. One, the comments by one of the commenters just today, I thought were pretty relevant, and I had those same concerns about. I mentioned it publicly briefly last time. I mean, we don't want a voter's pamphlet that has so much material on it, because everything gets lost in the detail, and the analysis doesn't come through clearly to the public. Things get snuck in or not reviewed very well. You don't have pro and con statement that really elucidate in detail the changes that are proposed. So I'm concerned about the timing with everything else that's going to be on the ballot, and including the statewide initiatives that are pretty broad and all-encompassing. I did hear, and maybe I heard incorrectly, and it may have been one of those things that snuck in last charter amendment. I think we're on a 5-year cycle. I thought I heard 10 years, which used to be what it was. And now it's every 5 years, and that was one of my complaints on another proposal that I have because they go over 2 election cycles. So it's really every 4 years we're going to be reconsidering the charter. The last point I want to make is redistricting was a mess. I think we need to make amendments to it. I think it would be very timely to do so. My fear with, as it sits substantively right now, as much as you talk about nonpartisan and how you select nonpartisan people, I mean, and I'll just say it, from my point of view, the last Charter Review Committee was nonpartisan, made up completely of one party. And I don't know where they got their agenda from. So that's problematic as to how we get nonpartisan candidates. And then if you change the supermajority to a majority, we would have had a charter, a redistricting approved that was absolutely gerrymandered in my view. The only thing that saved it was the fact that we needed a supermajority and it wasn't there. So going from the super majority down to a simple majority, we would have got stuck last time. So I'm wondering, I'm concerned about that. You know, do we need more than 4 members? Maybe we have 2 from a party, from each party, and then 2, you need a non-number, but another 2 from the community that is not affiliated with any party. So I would look at the broad body of it as well. But the devil's in the detail. I don't know where we'll go from here, but I do support redistricting tweaking.
Chair Medveji, if I may, just to clarify, for charter review pursuant to Section 9.1 of the charter, it is every 5 years, and for redistricting, it is every 10 years.
Just a couple of comments. I think as we're looking at this list, and there may be more things that people come up with, but it potentially could be 7. And I do share the caller's concern about too crowded and a ballot. And so if we could look at these with the lens of timing and what is important to address sooner than later, and if the next Charter Review Commission, if it's has it already been 2 years? So when will they reconvene? Do we have an idea?
Well, it's been 2 years ago, but I can't say as a lawyer when that start date would be. But it is a 5-year cycle.
So that's coming. That's coming up.
Yeah.
Pretty fast. Yeah, so those are just my thoughts.
So are you suggesting that redistricting, because it's still a little bit farther out, should not be addressed this time?
I think let's see where we're at with how many we come up with, and I'd like to hear from the auditor and his thoughts on timing of this. So just toss that into our deliberations.
Okay, the auditor is present if he wishes to comment. But Karen, let's hear from the council
one
first.
quick
Karen,
thing.
your thoughts?
Kathleen, would you remind us which of the sections did pass when we talked about it last week?
I believe it's 6.5 redistricting committee, and then the last one, which was the sheriff's salary.
And that's all. Okay, thank you. And I look forward to hearing from the auditor as well.
I have a few comments. I just wanted to make sure, do we for sure know that these totals are in fact the amounts that we need to make for these charter changes? I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth, and do we know that these are in fact the concrete costs for this? My concern is, I know the auditors talked about he was actually in fact responsible for some of this bad charter language. And I have some heartburn that this is coming out of the general fund and not out of the auditors personally. And I'm not sure if any of you are following this, but we were just at the legislative review earlier today, and there are not many as many initiatives as what was originally thought. I can't talk today. So only 3 initiatives will be making it to the ballot, not all 6. So we do have, I know it's going to be a hectic time election wise, but we do have more room for our charter review amendments if we want to make them. Not all 6 will be on there. So
Okay, Glenn, comments?
Nope, just waiting for Mr. Kimbley's comments.
So I think Councilor Belcott had a question on the cost.
Okay, so maybe we could have further detail from the auditor and any further pitch that the auditor has, because I didn't hear clear direction of consensus. Greg, did you wish to comment on the costs and any other comments you wanted to make on this proposal?
Well, of course, my first comment is I would like to make a public apology for not providing a better, more accurate estimate of the cost of placing these on the ballot. So my apologies for that. I was confused. I thought last time that the redistricting section of the charter, that proposed amendment had been supported by 4 people on the council, but maybe I misunderstood that.
Section 6.5 redistricting committee was supported to move forward.
But
Not 6.6.
Right, that's all redistricting though, and I'm not sure why you would support one and not the other. The second 6 point, whatever it is, 6.6.
Yes, it was voted on by council last time, and we didn't have 4 votes to support 6.6. They could change today.
Okay, yeah, good. Okay, so moving on. So I'm sympathetic to the observation that this will be a very large ballot this November, and the fact that redistricting only happens every 10 years. However, I do have confidence in the voters' ability to discern various issues on the ballots and to make informed choices of what's on the ballot. So with that, I am here to encourage the council to put forward an amendment to the charter regarding redistricting. There have been a couple of changes from what I presented to you last time. In my current proposal is a little bit changed from when I was here last week. But maybe just to summarize all of the changes might be helpful. So we would have the county council would appoint the members of the redistricting committee. There would be no involvement by the political parties in putting forward names for the council to choose from. That appointment would happen in September 30th in the year the census is conducted, in order to give the committee time to get everything in preparation to actually do the work. If the committee is not able to appoint a committee chair, currently the charter does not provide for what happens in that instance. So the proposal is that the council would appoint the committee chair if it's not able to do that. Then it also requires the county council to appoint a redistricting master, and that redistricting master would need to be an employee of the county's GIS department and qualified by education, experience, et cetera. It also, I thought this was self-evident, but I think it's a good idea. I've also added into the proposal that the county's redistricting plan must comply with the RCW regarding statewide redistricting, regarding compact area, contiguous, equal population, not favor, discriminate, et cetera. And then finally, clarifies, again, I thought this was in the charter, but as Councilor Belcott very aptly pointed out, there are some elements of the charter that, in hindsight, I could have written a lot better. And so here's an opportunity to do that with your support, possibly. But it clarifies that the plan submitted by the redistricting master is the plan that will go forward to the council unless it's amended by a majority of the committee. So that is the proposed charter amendment for redistricting. The 6.5, 6.6 issue, I do hope if you move forward with this, you'll consider that as a single amendment. Because really all 6.6 does is it talks about the requirements in state law that districts are contiguous, compact, not favor or disfavor any groups. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak here last week, get input, come back to you with what I think is a better proposal for the community. So thank you again for that. If there are any questions on that specific charter amendment proposal, I'm happy to talk about that now, or I can move forward to the next one.
So if I could ask a question on one of the later things that you said, because I lost sight of it. One, and the lawsuit was ultimately dismissed, so we never had a judicial ruling on it. But I would have assumed that the state law, which we referenced over and over again during our own discussions on redistricting, would have been impliedly controlling. What I heard from you and other comments is that that was the argument, that the county redistricting didn't have to comply with, you know, the contiguous, those 5 rules. I mean, is that true? I mean, did that come out in any of the earlier court rulings, or was it just an argument by someone that state law didn't apply?
I guess my only response is, it's in my own view, and as a former member of that redistricting committee, it's better to have it very clearly stated in the charter that the redistricting plan must be population nearly as equal as practicable, district lines coincide with boundaries of local political subdivisions and areas recognized communities of interest, convenient, contiguous, and compact, precincts wholly within a single legislative district, and fair and effective representation, not drawn to favor or discriminate any political party or persons. So I just think it's better to have that language in the charter. Then there's no question about it. It's very clear. But I agree with you. I thought that was self-evident.
Yeah, I thought that as well. I just have a question about the timing. Is this next election cycle better? Can this wait around, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, in terms of kind of the political question, is it more or less likely to pass in 2024 or 2026? I don't know. That's for others, people smarter than me to opine upon. In terms of the cost, it's the more offices and issues, as you know, election costs are allocated to the jurisdictions that have offices and or issues on the ballot, and then also how many voters are in each of those districts. So in an election year, when there's only 3 jurisdictions on the ballot, state and federal, that's one, Clark County with 2 offices, and then the, 3 offices, the Parks District, 3 issues. And then, I believe it's Camas is going to have an issue on the ballot. No, Clark Public Utilities District has an issue on the ballot. So it's 3 jurisdictions. In another year, when Clark County has, you know, all of the other electeds on the ballot, there's also state issues. It would be a smaller share of the cost for for Clark County in those years than it is currently in 2024. When you only have 3, when Clark County has 3 issues on the ballot, it's more expensive to place another issue on the ballot than it is if there's already 15 offices or 12 offices on the ballot. Does that help? It gets a little complicated.
So does
So
the
the upshot, let me just clarify just kind of the bottom line, because I've heard it over and over again that, so 2024 general election should, in all things being equal, be the cheapest route to getting these on the ballot.
Yep.
Okay, someone else was starting to speak. Was that Michelle or?
Yes, Chair. So does the state charter law not apply, which does not apply?
Are you asking about state redistricting laws?
The
Charter law.
state law related to the charter. State law not apply to our charter?
I'm not sure which state law you're referring to.
Is there state law, isn't there state, Washington state law, I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. Isn't there state, Washington state charter law?
Well, there is a state law that allows code counties to become county charters, if that's your question.
Councilor Belcott, is it in reference to Chair Mevigi's question about, okay, so I think that was tied to state law and the redistricting process specifically, not necessarily the charter.
Okay, well, Councilor Belcott, you're not asking about state laws regarding charters, you're asking about state laws regarding redistricting, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the specific state law that is under discussion here, I don't have the citation number, but yeah, I think the one that says equal population, can't discriminate, contiguous, follow borders, that stuff. Yes, I do believe that state law would apply to county redistricting efforts. However, I'm told that in court proceedings, a judge, and this is, I've just been told this. I wasn't in court when it was said. I made enough errors in the past 2 weeks. I'm not going to repeat myself. Try not to, at least. But I was told that a judge made the statement, perhaps even in the ruling, I'm not sure, that section of state law does not apply to charter counties because it's a charter county. I don't know. That's about all I have on that. But again, I certainly don't see any harm in putting into the county charter the requirements that making it absolutely crystal clear that the plan must comply with those different elements. Is that helpful?
I have a process question. So the decisions, are we just doing thumbs up on each of these? And then what would be the next step? Would this go before a public hearing and we'd have a formal vote to move these forward onto the ballot?
And Leslie can correct me, but yeah, so today is just a thumbs up of 4 people so that we can start doing our work. Greg's already done some of his work with the language, so we can get everything set up right in the resolution. We have to do the pro and con statements, but the resolution with the ballot title will be coming back to council for final approval in a public meeting.
And then when we see all of the detail, we will be making our decision based on all of that detail.
So, and I think that,
vote may change at that point.
Yeah, and I think what our auditor has submitted is the detailed changes that he's recommending. And I know the sheriff is working on some language for your consideration for that one. Yes, so those will be specific.
But of course, between now and the final approval with the resolution, there could well be other refinements. Yeah, as you've seen from last week to this week. So.
And as we went through this before, in a much more narrow set of subjects, the timeline gets very compressed to get the detail, to get 4 people to agree to it. Yeah. And one thing that you said that I just want to wholeheartedly endorse, when it ultimately came to us for redistricting, we absolutely used state law. I mean, there was no question. We didn't question it. We just said, yeah, these are the factors we need to follow in order to have fair redistricting.
Yeah. Well, if I could.
One way, if I could comment about that. One way to
go ahead, Karen.
Do I have an echo as well? Can you?
Yes, there's something wrong with the system.
Yeah, staff.
Yeah.
I think
come up here.
Are taking care of it. Yes, that's better.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
It should be taken care of.
Thank you so much. I forgot where I was headed with that comment, but I did want to say that I appreciate your suggestions Greg, for combining 6.5 with 6.6. Simplicity is in order, and I think by putting the two redistricting issues together, it is simpler to understand what is being proposed, and that is a good thing. It's also just one amendment rather than two, so that's good as well. And I think that your changes within, as far as content, are very good as well. I really like, for instance, the notion of council versus political parties, choosing the committee members and making those appointments, because this should not be a political process, and council should not be either at this point. We are considered to be not appointed by political parties and therefore apolitical in nature. I also really like the notion of having a majority, in other words, 3 of 5 of committee members making decisions on things like amendments, because it gets very convoluted for them when 4 votes are required to move anything forward. It tends to stifle things. So I really thank you for making those changes to what you're bringing forward. So that's all good in my book.
Excuse me, Council Leslie Lopez. Councilor Bowerman, I just wanted to make a comment, and also to the auditor. One thing as part of this process is, of course, the PA's office will review any drafts that come. We will have to look into the issue of whether or not we can actually combine those 2 charters, and if it's the same, the one subject. So we'll have to take a look at that to make sure that it qualifies for that.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing. Obviously, I would like just one amendment. It's an omnibus, but the single subject rule would prevent that. So, yeah, it would be great if we could combine them. So I'm taking that as a thumbs up from Karen.
Yes.
On the, okay.
And this is on 6.5 and 6.6.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, yes. And Sue Marshall as well. Myself as well. Glenn, Michelle, and I see Michelle
Yes.
and Glenn. So unanimous on both of those.
Thank you all.
And any change in the general fund head is coming out of your budget.
Well, absolutely, which then in turn comes out of your budget. But I mean, actually, as a technical matter, it comes out of the elections fund, and then we every 15 or 20 years we come to the county council and say, that $1 million that you transferred to the elections fund, we need to increase that now. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. If I could move on to my second proposal to amend the charter regarding the initiative process. Yeah.
Please.
Okay, thank you.
Unless someone else is going to introduce it, you can go ahead.
Yeah, and just so I don't forget, because I think the costing, Kristen, can you go down just a little bit? You had provided costing for up to 3 amendments. If we're going to be doing more than 3, how does that increment
It just
continue?
continues to go down a little bit, each one. 4 is going to be whatever. What's the difference between the second and the third is, what's that, $21,000? The difference between third and fourth will be $20,000 or
Okay.
something like that.
I just wanted to make sure that,
Fourth and the fifth will be $19,000.
sounds like it's a good deal, but it will be adding up.
Well, and
Yeah.
and if the lawyers agree that we can combine a couple, then we've just eliminated the cost of an additional amendment. Okay, why don't you go ahead and introduce
Thank you.
your
Thank you.
initiative.
So my proposal to amend the section of the charter that deals with the initiative is, with one exception, really only to clarify existing language. Existing language says that initiatives may not be proposed that include the 6 elements that the Constitution, state law, court orders have very clearly defined as outside of the scope of local initiatives. The flaw in the county charter, and again, Councilor Bilcott, yep, I'm guilty. The flaw in the charter is that there's no provision of what happens when an initiative comes that does violate those, or does include those 6 things. And so the proposal I have provides a mechanism when an initiative comes and says, I want to increase the counselor's salaries. Well, that's not one of the elements within the scope of local initiatives. And so the mechanism I'm proposing, someone has to make that determination that initiative that's been proposed is outside of those, or is including one of those 6 elements. My idea is that'd be the prosecuting attorneys that makes that determination, then informs the auditor that the initiative is not going to be accepted. And then, it was brought to my attention that that's a lot of power for the prosecuting attorney office to say that initiative has one of these 6 elements and shall not go forward. So, I think we all support the idea of checks and balances in our government. And so what I'm proposing is that if whatever the prosecuting attorney's decision is about those 6 elements, that decision may be appealed by the initiative sponsor or with the majority vote of the council by the county council. And then it provides, along with that, the cost of filing that appeal by the initiative sponsor would be paid for by the council. This is all kind of as you might recall from last week, my commentary about the impact that the initiative process has had with citizens' confidence in their government, where initiatives are sponsored, signatures are gathered, the initiative appears on the ballot, it's then challenged in court, found to be unconstitutional, and people wonder, well, what the heck's going on here? I voted for that, we voted for that, why isn't it in effect? So that's the fundamental goal of the original language, and then this is just some clarification and providing a mechanism for that process, and then providing checks and balances against the decision by the prosecuting attorney's office. And then it also, the other, I would say the significant addition in what I'm proposing, as I mentioned last week, there's language in the charter currently, again, my bad, that is in conflict. So one of the 6 elements that says initiative can't raise taxes or fees or lower taxes or fees. And then below that, it talks about the initiative has to, if it increases costs, it has to provide a recommendation of where that money's coming from. Well, what revenues does the county have besides taxes and fees? Grants? Well, you can only use grants for certain things. So, in thinking about that, my proposal is that, as I said last week, the first question that legislators have often when there's a bill proposed is how much is this going to cost? People who are signing petitions are acting in the exact same role as legislators. They are proposing a law. And when people are signing those petitions, I think they also want to know how much will this cost? So the other kind of major part of this proposal would require the budget office, give them 6 weeks to determine if there is a financial impact from this proposed initiative, and then if there is a financial impact, to put a statement on the petition of what that is. So a couple other things, but that's really the essence of it. And I do think there's more of a timing necessity on this than there is on the redistricting.
So, and I would agree with the last statement, because you can get initiatives every year. And so my first question is, and I'm assuming when the charter was drafted, for which you're taking a lot of responsibility for.
I don't want to take too much, but
that you were looking at other charter county models, and I'm wondering, are you basing these initiative changes on any particular county charter model?
No.
No. Okay. All right. So I've got some comments and questions, but I'll start with Sue.
Thank you.
I will expand a little bit, though. Yeah, while I have the first piece, the 6 elements, and that first section of the charter, that was a collaboration between the former members of the charter back in 2014 and myself, actually the charter chair and myself. This piece about the financial impact is something that has been in my mind for quite a while, and have had some discussions with people, but neither one of those you'll find in any other county charter in the state. I do think it's a good idea.
Well, I mean, from being a member of WASAC, and we all really are, I mean, the number one thing is this an unfunded mandate we're getting from Olympia? I mean, it's kind of the same thing. So I would agree it's an important concept, and I think the public, before they vote on it, would want to know how much is this going to cost us? And I'm sure there will be disputes and argument one way or the other about those true costs. But in any case, Sue, go ahead.
Right, thank you. Just a couple of questions related to the appeal process. Is it an either or that it would come to the council to decide, or there would be a separate independent appeal process?
So what I've suggested is that the initiative sponsor, in the scenario where the prosecuting attorney says, yep, this initiative is trying to reduce taxes, and this proposed initiative shall be rejected. In that scenario, the initiative sponsor has the option of appealing the prosecuting attorney's decision to a superior court.
Oh, to Superior Court or the council?
No, I'm not.
Okay, to Superior Court is what you're suggesting. Okay. And, you know, related to those 6 items, so if I heard you correctly, one of those items is not in creating a cost burden, or?
So those 6 items are providing for compensation and working conditions of county employees or elected officials. So you cannot have an initiative that says county employees shall get a 3% reduction in their salary or their compensation. The initiative cannot propose a reduction in county employees' salaries or an increase in county employee salaries. By initiative, you cannot change the boundaries of council districts. Can't do that through an initiative. Initiative cannot impose a tax or repeal a tax. So you can't have an initiative. At least this is what I'm reading in the charter, and subject to the prosecuting attorney's opinion on this. But initiative cannot also repeal taxes. So the criminal justice law sales tax initiative cannot repeal that. Cannot authorize repeal provision of service or program provided by the county. So you can't, by initiative, you can't repeal, I don't know, something we do, some program we do. And by initiative, you can't amend or repeal a charter. There is a different mechanism to amend the charter, but it's not through the initiative process.
Okay.
So those are the 6 elements.
Great. But an initiative could create a cost burden to the county, and so that's where that fiscal impact statement could come into play.
And just for clarification, so that was the kind of the goal of the original language that says initiatives that require new or additional sources of revenue shall include a recommended revenue source. Well, as we just said,
we can't do that.
Yeah, 7.2A, number 4 says you can't authorize repeal taxes or fees through initiative. So that's why I've suggested just deleting that section on initiative requirements. It says if you're going to have an initiative that's going to cost money, tell us where we're going to get the money from.
Okay, so it could be you could impose a cost burden, but you'd have to say what that is.
So what would happen in that scenario, I believe, is that the budget office would look at that initiative, analyze it, and say, yes, there will be a cost to implement this and or ongoing cost to maintain this going into the future.
Great.
And then we provide an estimate of that. Councilor Meviji, I do think it's an interesting point about how you might have a check and balance against the budget office's estimate. I was thinking about that a bit today, but I don't have a good answer for that.
I think it's a step in the right direction, so thanks for the clarification.
Glenn, Michelle, Karen, other questions, comments?
I have, oh, I'm getting
Go ahead,
feedback.
Michelle.
Dan. Can we get okay, I think there it is. Thank you so much. I just wanted to re-clarify, because I don't feel like my question related to the cost of the amendments was answered. Has this been verified that this is in fact the cost? And is it possible that we could use some of the ARPA remodeling funds from the elections office that was given to them, the 4 million, for these costs?
Well, Councilor Belcott, I can certainly appreciate your kind of questions, given the confusion that I created with my wrong estimate that was provided to you previously. I will say that spent a fair amount of time first thing Monday morning, and again, full credit to Councilor Young for bringing this, asking the question on Friday, but Monday morning, spent a fair amount of time looking into this estimate of costs pretty closely, and I'm, these are estimates, and you'll see, at least my email said this is an estimate and the cost is about this much, so I qualified it twice. But these are our best estimates of what the incremental costs of placing another issue on the ballot by the county would be. And again, the cost is not a direct charge to the county's general fund. The cost is borne by the elections fund, but and then the elections fund is funded through transfers from the general fund and also from billings to other jurisdictions. As far as ARPA, I can't speak to that. I have to refer to others.
So maybe that's
and I thought I heard embedded in that you wanted to take from the remodeling fund, which that's all in progress, and I think already committed by the money that we allocated towards the remodel project. Maybe I heard that question wrong.
Yeah, that is correct. So the money is committed, and I don't have verification on this, but it might sound like we might need a little bit more on the remodel. I'm not sure yet on that, but yes, the money.
Let's hope for a competitive market.
Yeah. So yes, the money, council did approve that funding to go to remodel the auditor's office.
So on this proposal for the initiative, other comments or questions? Glenn, Karen?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I understood something that you had said a little bit earlier, and then Council Marshall clarified, and the answer that you gave was the opposite of what I thought I understood. So I just wanted to clarify, during the appeal process, the appeal would be done through the Superior Court. And I thought that you had mentioned, or the council. Was that an error?
So there's been a lot of stuff flying around, Councilor Young, and it's hard to keep track of this stuff. I appreciate that. What I'm proposing, as of today, or as of yesterday, I think, is that if the council, if a majority of the council members want to appeal the decision by the prosecuting attorneys, that's an option available to the council as well. So it provides, again, kind of check and balance on both sides regarding the prosecuting attorney's decision. Is that helpful?
Okay.
But would it still go to Superior Court?
Yes.
That is helpful. The one thing that I mean, that would have to definitely be looked in, because that puts us in a really awkward position, because we would essentially be ignoring or opposing the advice from our own counsel. So I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I think that it definitely would have to be looked into and figured out how that would work exactly.
Well, I guess my layperson's comment on that, the way this is structured is that the prosecuting attorney would advise the county auditor as to whether or not the initiative should be accepted or not accepted. The prosecuting attorney would not be advising the county council on that matter. So.
Well, and if I could jump in on that, certainly what would have to happen is, this is one thing that the PA's office will be looking at in terms of the language to see if that can occur, because there are other potential issues, such as one part of the county suing another part of the county potentially. So we'd have to look at that to determine if that's something that could be done, and we can bring that back to council.
So I just want to comment here. One, I don't want to lose focus on whether we're going to give a thumbs up to move forward, because the details will be those that we're really going to have to work hard on. So we're not really voting on a final version right now. And quite frankly, I was going to pick up on that appellate process as well. So I'll give you my thoughts in general. One, we just recently, it's in progress right now, had another initiative, and it was immediately rejected. And I read that in the paper, and the first thing I did was go to my charter and say, how did they just reject this charter or this initiative? And I realized, we've got a structural gap here, because initiatives are a precious right of the people. So we want to facilitate it. On the other hand, we don't want someone to go out and collect 300,000 signatures and then find out that what they're proposing is unlawful or can't occur. So, there's a balance here. We need structure to make sure we have a good review process. I came from a state that we had an avalanche of initiatives just about every election. It was a joke, and a plethora of initiatives were garbage, and it took the courts years to sort through that. And I will just comment on this one too. We had one a few years ago. It was my first view of, oh my gosh, what's going on in Washington State? Because it was an omnibus initiative on guns. The Secretary of State balked, not only procedurally as to how those signatures were gathered, but also the multiplicity of all the subjects that were in that bill. And basically, the Washington Supreme Court said, it's a ministerial act, just push it forward. And at the same time, the Attorney General, whose office should have been a lever in reviewing it, just like our local PA's offices, was publicly supporting the initiative. So, that was a conflict of interest if ever I saw one. And just to comment, because I never did publicly, it changed everything from training requirements to locking guns in a private residence and the criminal liability of those households that lose guns that don't know it after a certain period of time, to redefining what an assault weapon was. And I would mention that it wasn't in the title. It wasn't identified as a change in law. It wasn't analyzed. There was no pro and con against it. They just did it. They just changed the definition of what an assault rifle is. Most states expend huge, and the federal government spends huge amount of political capital on defining what an assault weapon is. And Washington State, by initiative, just did it by changing it without notifying anybody. So the initiative process can really be abused. So we do need structure. I support what you're proposing. I am somewhat reluctant to say right now, I'm hoping we can find a better path to say, hey, if you get kicked back, if yours gets rejected, you're going to have to hire a lawyer and go to court costs to go to the Superior Court, instead of having some free kind of appeal to the county council or reconsideration. I think there needs to be a no-cost option, because this is such a precious right for the public. So having said that, I would give a thumbs up to move forward on this. I think we have a lot of work to do, and we have to be very careful in this area, but I appreciate the thought that you've put into this. And the cost estimates themselves will cost money. to perform
Yeah.
and analyze, but I think it's an important aspect of this. Anyway, other thoughts or comments?
I have a
If I could
comment.
just react.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle, and then we'll go back to Greg.
I'm getting feedback again. Okay, there it goes. Based on the auditor's comments that this was the lowest priority, because there's still a cost associated with all this, I'm a no vote.
Sorry, what was Michelle's comment? I missed.
She, based on the auditor's comment that this is a low priority, she is not supportive of it.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Well, if I could, if I said that, it'd be incorrect. I intended to say that the redistricting charter amendment would be a lower priority than the initiative charter amendment. If I misstated that, I'm sorry. But yeah, to be clear, I consider the charter amendment regarding the initiative process to be a much higher priority than the redistricting committee charter.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And just to be clear and keep us on track, other comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll see if we have a thumbs up or not, just to move forward. Greg, you had another comment.
Well, if I could, I wanted to react to your comments, or Councilor Meviji. Yeah, the power of voters to make law in this state, in this county, is inviolate. It's highly important. However, I do go back to, I believe citizens' confidence in their government is better served if they understand the costs, and if when they vote on an initiative, that it actually can be put into effect. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'd like to have some clarity on who supports moving forward and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, hearing no question or comment, I see a thumbs up with Sue, thumbs up from me, and I see two others online, and a thumbs down by Michelle. Thank you all for that discussion. Is that clear enough for, okay.
And thank you. And then I would also, just in conclusion, yeah, I look forward to discussions about how to make this better. That's fantastic. I think we all do share the same goal, so thank you.
All right, moving on to 9.1, and this is one of those things. So I don't know if this came from my comments. I think, you know, obviously, I think a 5-year is too frequent, especially under the current loophole in the law that basically allows it every 4 years because of the 2-year window that they're putting forward, or at least did the last iteration. I don't have any, I think it's too big a change. I mean, people just voted on it, although they may not have known what they voted on based on the comment I heard earlier today. So I don't feel strongly about trying to have this as a charter. I mean, it would be almost like a rebuke to the last vote, which was just a few years ago, and I'd rather not do that.
I agree with that. I just have some of the percentages with which some of the things were just passed this last time, and it was almost 64% supported this, so I would not want to support that. And if it's important, in a couple of years, we'll be able to go back to the next review commission and suggest something else.
So is there any support for this one? Since I kind of proposed it and I have withdrawn my support, I don't see anyone pushing for this, so why don't we just reject this one out of hand? Okay, moving on to 9.4. And again, whether it's a single subject or not, I think if there's a strong argument that some of these changes on structure, here's how you proceed, this would be a single subject in my mind. So the issue is this: it is not in the charter. This came from a PA opinion because there was nothing in the charter that said you couldn't go beyond it. Basically, the charter puts the committee in place for a period of 1 year, 1 calendar year. Their term is up 30 December. But what happened last year was, and in part, I'm trying to address it with the rest of this, they spent the first half a year figuring out what topics they wanted to talk about. And then so the second half of the year, as they're drafting this stuff, they said, we need more time. So what they ended up doing was putting a whole bunch of charter amendments, not on that year or not on that election year, but the very next year. So basically it bled over to a second year. And there was nothing specifically in the charter that said, no, that you can't do that. You have one bite at the apple, you're meeting for a year, you come up with your charter proposals, if any, and put them before the public, not over 2 election cycles. So that's what this is talking about. It's to close an interpretive loophole. And I'm not criticizing the PA for their decision, because there isn't language specifically to counter that interpretation, that they could, theoretically, looking at that interpretation, they could do this year, the next year, and the next election after that. There's no limitation on the end date as to when they could have these charter amendments put before the voters. Anyway, that's my thought. I'm very strongly supportive of putting this before the people, but I think 9.4 and 9.1 really is one charter amendment, but we can get to that in a moment.
Just a couple of things. You know, concerns I've heard is when after the review commission was elected, how quickly they convened, because some that I've talked to have said we should convene right away, and that would give them a little bit more time, because they will be faced with the same crunch that we're looking at now to, you know, prioritize and do all of the reviews. So one year isn't a lot of time. And then I've also heard that there were so many proposals because it had been 10 years. So I think if it's every 5 years, perhaps there would just be fewer. So I think I could be okay with this.
Chair?
If I guess if they convene, if they're able to convene right away, if things are done in a more timely way.
I do think that they convened right away last time. It was, maybe it was January 1, I don't know, but they were very quickly working together.
Because theoretically they could convene in November.
Yeah, we'll have to clarify that to see if they can actually start before the year.
Because it's a quick turnaround.
Yeah, and so I agree that's a good point. If they could start earlier, I do believe they did start immediately in January, which is when most new terms start. Anyway, that's something worthy of the detail of fixing this loophole. Glenn, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, so I'm not so sure that there is a problem. And the reason that I say that is the last time we did this was also the first time. So the process was likely inefficient compared to what will be done in a repeat session. There were lots of bugs and kinks to work out in the charter because it was the first review of the charter. And I, quite frankly, I understand the concerns with it, but I am not convinced that it will ever go 2 years again. You know, if we go through the next session and it extends to 2 years, and I feel like at that point it might be worth the effort and the expense to put it on the ballot to see what the voters think about that. But we may be, you know, throwing money at a problem that doesn't really exist, just given the circumstances that it was the first time through the cycle.
So thanks for that thought. I would just counter that it'll be a first time each time, because you're going to be electing new charter committee members every time. And they've exacerbated what we experienced last time by reducing it to some, and I agree with Sue, because it isn't going to be a 10-year period. Maybe there will be less amendments, we hope. But with 5 years, you're basically every 4 years from the last amendment put before the people. And I think that's a real problem. I think they'll be reinventing the mistakes over and over again unless we give them more specific direction. And that's what the next section is about, is how to get them off on the right foot after they sit, whether it's in January or sometime earlier. Let's start them out by hearing from the elected, from the county manager, from people actually doing the job that may have an idea of, hey, here's been the problem in the past. Here's the friction we have. Here's why things that used to take months now take many, many years. We can speed that up. Anyway, more thoughts and comments so far. I think I only hear one thumbs up on this. Or two, okay. Michelle, Karen?
Mine is a thumbs down, just because I think the 5-year review period in 9.1 and this 9.4 are so closely linked that it would make sense to me if they go forward at the same time, which would be a later time because we did not approve 9.1.
Okay, so I'm not clear. Are you in favor of it or not?
Nope.
You're not in favor?
Maybe
Thumbs down.
later,
Okay.
but not now.
Okay, Michelle? Okay, so we have 2 thumbs down, 1 thumbs up, 1 almost thumbs up. Oh, you're a thumbs down? Okay, well, I'm not going to pursue it further. I made my piece. I think it makes perfect sense, but oh well. I hate legal ambiguity that you drive a freight train through that can be easily corrected. Having said that, that one died. How about 9.1, which sets up a framework for them to perform their task? And that's what I kept mentioning. It really was very painful to watch on the periphery. And we're kind of seeing that now with our ethics committee. I mean, they're a year into it and they still don't even have rules of procedures yet. I mean, it took at least 6 months before they started to get to an agenda. Half of their time. And I think it was all because they didn't have a starting point. This gives them a starting point. They'll hear from people doing the job that have insider knowledge on what the friction points are. This doesn't mandate that they do what the elected officials want them to do or the county manager. It just mandates that that's the first step, that they listen to them. Maybe it'll generate different ideas or better ideas. At least it frames the potential issues in the charter that they should consider changing, instead of just having random people come from the community, get elected, and all have individual ideas on what they think should be happening differently in the county. I mean, the 5th district that was a revisited charter discussion that failed the first time it was discussed. It won't prevent any of that. It just gives them a different concrete starting point.
I would just say that 5th district was very important.
What's that?
That 5th district was very important to get through.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll go to a show of thumbs.
Chair?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm pretty much in the same boat on this one. I think we should, to me, it's not warranted spending tax dollars to put this on the ballot. I think most of this will self-rectify the next time through the process. And, from my understanding, electeds were never excluded from giving public testimony at any one of the meetings. So I understand where you're coming from. I also agree that sometimes, when we're in the position that we are in, we have an understanding of things unlike, citizens, because they're not there. They don't see the ins and outs of all the things that we do. So, our testimony, our input has merit for sure, but I feel like it is adequately addressed and that we can address them at each of their meetings. So just for the purpose of being a good steward of tax funds, I don't support this one at this time either.
Okay, Karen, Michelle?
I would say that these are very good ideas and things that should certainly be considered and I hope done by the committee. However, I don't feel that they are of sufficient level to merit being in the charter. They could be suggested procedures that would be given to them at the time of their appointment, and that ought to take care of it. But not to be passed upon by the voters and in the charter and legitimized in that manner.
Thank you. Michelle, did you have anything you wanted to add? Because I think this one has already died in inglorious death.
Yeah, I concur with all the comments that were just said. Yes, it's dead.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on then. I don't think we need to have an actual show of thumbs. I heard that orally. Okay, 5.5, and the sheriff is present himself. Did you wish to reintroduce it or make additional comment, or do we want to just start discussing it? Okay,
let's hear from
John
the sheriff.
Horsch is stepping forward.
There? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm taking my chances here. But if you're going to revote, I think there's just maybe a couple points. I wasn't aware last week, and I think it came up that it could go into effect midterm, which I'm not going to complain about, but I was not aware of that. The other thing that, and I listened to I was out of town last week, but I did listen to the comments by Under Sheriff Hansen. He relayed all my thoughts. I would not have asked had the cost been so high had this been a single ballot, because I think that's a lot for the taxpayers to ask for you and to come out of the fund. So since that has changed and changed again, I think it's even more clear. The one thing that wasn't hit upon and not just for myself, but the succession planning is my retirement is affected by the salary. So I'm taking a hit on my retirement, my state retirement. So that's one thing that wasn't brought up and I knew this going into it if I got elected, but knowing that I wanted to work on it to get it changed. So that's the other part of this is not just the annual salary, but my retirement is based on my annual salary, a percentage. So it's been going down this last year and this year. And so that's another piece that wasn't mentioned as well, in addition to just the annual salary. So if you have any questions, I would take them.
And thanks for waiting all afternoon, but I know it's been really interesting listening to this.
I got a lot of emails done too, so.
Question of the sheriff.
Just a quick question. I understood that there were comparables being done, and I would think that they would be on the side of being in favor of considering and ultimately passing this particular amendment. Do you know the results, or have they been done?
Would you like me to comment on that? I actually spoke to the most comparable. It's almost actual equal. Sheriff with no jail, the population is the same, and it was a 34% difference. In fact, the sheriff actually said that their council, it's not under a charter, is considering his pay change because the compression language in there and all his commanders and everybody below him make more money. So they're currently working on raising his, but right now it's about 34% more than the Clark County Sheriff.
Thank you.
Other questions? Sue, did you have one?
Well, I was interested in the comparables, but also I think the succession planning is important to do. And I think with the whole, really throughout the county and the Baker-Tilly that we just went through, and how important it is really to keep up to date on that. So I'd be supportive of that. There are other elected positions that may be thinking about this as we're talking about it now. And I will just say this, including the county council, because I'm not afraid to talk about this. It's not that I'm looking for a raise, but if the ability for someone to serve in this role, you know, there are some folks who are carrying a job as well, and you know, it really becomes prohibitive to really have a diverse representation on the council if the salaries really can't support them without having a full-time other job.
Other questions? Okay, hearing none, I would say this. Number one, you know, we did go through Baker Tilly and we found a number of positions that were way below market. And one, I wouldn't want to dissuade any commander or sergeant or lieutenant that aspires to be a sheriff to be dissuaded because of the diminished retirement or diminished salary compared to their own employees. We always want to attract the best for Clark County. So looking into the future, I'm in favor of this. I also want to retain the current sheriff here as best we can. So this isn't about one man. This isn't about one position. It's about fairness, and all the comparisons, the pros and cons will come out in the process as we look at the language, but also within the ballot initiative itself. There will be a lot of discussions about, you know, what does our sheriff make in comparison to other sheriffs? So nor am I trying to get rid of the sheriff that we have by raising the salary ultimately if the public decides to do that. So I'm a thumbs up. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll go to thumbs up. I see Karen's got a thumb up. Glenn? All right.
Chair, just
unanimous.
one quick comment, if I
Yes,
could.
please, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
you know, this really illustrates an important issue, and to tag along with what Councilor Marshall mentioned, nobody should be faced with the decision of whether they will run or whether they can run or whether they will or can run again, you know, based on a salary. So it's an important discussion that needs to be had in the communities. How much do we need to pay elected officials in order to get good qualified people in and to have the most diversity that's possible and not have somebody have to leave an elected position because they can't afford to stay in it. So I appreciate the sheriff bringing this forward, and we'll work on it and see what the voters have to say.
Super. And so I believe that concludes all of our lists. And I would say we don't have enough time to come up with new ideas. So don't come up with any new ideas from here on. This is the list, and it's plenty to work on, especially some of the auditor's proposals. I think there's going to be some tough thinking and processes and procedures, and to make sure we protect that right to initiative. So if everyone's ready to move on, we'll move on to new business. Number 5.
Yes, that's fine. I just want to clarify that for the record, because I know we got staff tracking for minutes, just to concisely say 6.5, 6.6, 7.2 are moving forward, and the section 5.5, the sheriff. So I just wanted to state that for the record for clarity.
Okay, hearing no disagreement. Number 5, new business.
There's no new business today.
We had councilor reports yesterday. Are there any additional councilor reports today? Hearing none. Number 7, work session request. 7.1, Workforce Southwest Washington, IBR study.
So I will just read what's on here, and I will ask Councilor Bowerman if she has anything to add, but this is coming from Workforce Southwest Washington, and they're asking for a 15-minute work session with council to share the results of a study that they had done for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project, focusing on the recommendations for job creation associated with building the bridge. And Councilor Bowerman, if you have anything to add, please do so.
I don't. Your last sentence really hit it, because her focus is a little bit different than what we tend to hear in general, in that she looks especially at job creation. And that, I think, adds a dimension that is important for us to consider.
Okay, Michelle, Glenn, is everyone in favor? Okay. Yes. I heard unanimous thumbs. All right, so policy updates. Number 8.
Good afternoon, Council. Jordan Bogey for the record. Just have one main item for you today that I wanted to raise. I sent an email earlier today forwarding some information that I received from the State Association of Counties. They are beginning their 2025 legislative priorities work, and so looking ahead to the next legislative session, what the counties want to collaborate on. They are looking for proposals from counties about items to consider, and so those priorities are due to WASAC by the 19th of April. So you have about a month, but I wanted to just raise that here for council in a public setting. I've also sent an email to council with some of my initial thoughts on some potential items that we might want to collaborate with other counties on. They include things like indigent defense, which is going to be complicated by the ongoing lawsuit. WASAC is suing the state, and then also the new proposed bar standards, thinking about our efforts around capital funding for the jail and ways we can collaborate with other counties to support the state, supporting renovation of our facilities that are aging. I also was thinking, we've had a lot of discussion around water quality, lake management. Is that something where we can collaborate with other counties on anything for the legislature? So I've got some initial broad thoughts that I've been pulling together from that, but I just wanted to raise the issue now. I'd like to talk to everybody in our one-on-one meetings, and then also bring this back over the coming weeks so that we can have a discussion about it. But I just wanted to sort of set the stage here today.
And if I could add to that, I don't know what the best process for that is, but I would encourage everyone to send you an email with their top priorities. I mean, you probably already know what mine are, and I'm going to keep hitting on them. We need specific provisos for LACMAS and Vancouver. And we have a lot of collaboration going on right now, but, just as far as a narrow path forward, that'll be an ongoing cost that I'm hoping the legislature will share with us, and as Ecology's work is done. But anyway, I think if everyone sends Jordan an email and just kind of put on their thinking cap on things that you would like to make sure we don't lose sight of. I mean, broadband is still percolating out there. We're hoping to see those grant rounds come back in a very positive way. Anyway, otherwise, keep on us so we make that deadline. I mean, I want to have a good, robust list from us that's pertinent to us.
I think that's a great suggestion, and thanks for putting this initial one together. Just like the legislature just wrapped up, but we have to get right back to work, and I think we can be more proactive in this longer session. But I think it would be valuable, not now, but at some point when we get a longer list together, kind of have an initial chat amongst ourselves about what we could generally get some agreement on.
I did have a quick question though, because you meant bar standards, and my wife, who was a lawyer too, went apoplectic. She thought she had read the Supreme Court here just removed a bar exam. Have you heard that? That they're going to eliminate the bar exam?
They're moving toward
Washington State.
Leslie, do you want to add something to that? They have provided alternatives to the state bar.
So they're not eliminating it, they're just providing alternates.
That's my understanding.
Moving Oregon's lead, I would add.
Chair?
if I can add something for council's consideration, I've talked to Jordan about this too. In light of the Washington State bar standards that passed for public defense and what those will do to counties and the consideration that we'll have to look at for our costs in 2025 if the Supreme Court passes that, what our implementation will look like. I would also encourage council to consider the Superior Court conversation of unifying Superior Court throughout the state of Washington. It's starting to take shape in some of the associations, so I would also look at that as well. That's a significant cost for the county as well.
I think that's going to be a lead topic as it moves forward, because if they unleash this, every county will have, I mean, there'll just be dismissing cases, ultimately not being able to find lawyers and not being able to pay them. Anyway, it's a huge issue. Thanks for bringing that up. Did you have other issues to brief today?
The only other item that I have, it's kind of a coda on that discussion. And so WASAC, their legislative steering committee group, is going to be having an initial planning retreat based on some of these initial priorities that are getting put together on May 16th and 17th. And I am planning to attend that in person up in Olympia, so I can kind of get in the ground floor of the, I came in, I was kind of in the midpoint. So I'd like to get in kind of the front level, be able to represent the county, meet some more folks up there, and also work. I know Councilor Belkide is our representative, so if she's able to make it, or if she's not able to attend, then work with whoever the alternative is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but to make sure that we have a pretty robust representation and that I can bring the council's priorities to WASAC and really represent us.
Super. Not to put anybody on the spot, but Michelle, are you aware of the date? Are you able to go up to Olympia? Who is the alternate if she's not? I don't recall.
I'm not aware of the date, but I can make that happen. What's the date, Jordan? Do you know?
Yeah, it's May 16th and 17th, and we just got this information yesterday afternoon. So I think you've been CC'd on a couple of emails, and I sent you one as well, so we can follow up. But this has all kind of come together in the last just little bit here.
Super.
Yes, I can.
If there isn't great. If there isn't an alternate, it might be helpful to have an alternate, given it the longer session, and there'll probably be a bigger scope of work.
I believe I'm the alternate.
Okay, great.
All right. So thank you for the policy update. We have one executive session, potential litigation, RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren little I, for approximately 5 minutes. That sounds optimistic, but we'll count on it. There is potential after action. We'll be meeting with our lawyer. It's, I have 2:32. Let's start at 2:35, and we'll be back by 2:40. Hopefully. All right, so we'll recess from this proceeding and go into our executive session. $2:40. Okay, we're back in session. We did conduct our executive session together with our lawyers, and we have a quorum. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move for Clark County to file a lawsuit as a plaintiff in the insulin litigation against manufacturers and pharmacy benefit managers, to be filed in the United States District Court, Western District of Washington.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries, and we are adjourned.